Hello and welcome back to the Painted Mini. This is Travis. I'm your host, and today we finally made it to these beautiful sandworms. So this is going to be pretty quick and easy as far as process goes. I decided to use speed paint because of the awesome texture on the minis, and you'll see here I'll give my ratios as we go. And I wanted the younger sandworms to be a little bit lighter in color, a lot less gradation. And then as there's one medium age sandworm, the medium sized one, and then you'll see the big guy, how I definitely use more gradation, starting dark at the base and working up to lighter toward the head. So you can see here, we got our mixture, and using a mediocre brush, it doesn't really matter. You just need to coat it on, be liberal with it, get wet. You want to spread it around. I started at the base for all of these and kind of worked my way toward the head. And if you haven't already, I'd appreciate it if you could give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. You can see as I flip this worm over that I'm still using a zenithal highlight when I prime. And if you go back to my very first video, I do a good demonstration of that. But basically I'm painting with a gray primer and then hitting the top with a white primer. And again, you want the speed paint to be a little bit wet to where it can kind of pull on its own, dry on its own, solidify into those cracks. And for this, I didn't mind the paint pulling a little more than usual. All right, now for the big one, you see here, I increase the hardened leather color, the darker color, just a little bit of pallid bone, a little bit of the yellow. And I'm going to use this darker color on the base. And I'm actually going to go through and do a second coat of it just to make sure it's nice and dark toward the base. And this guy eats up a bit of paint, but it's well worth it. And I just continue. I do another single layer so it'll kind of feather out a little bit when I go to the next set. Now I need to remix, so I change up the mixture a little bit. Here I have pallid bone with 7 drops. It's gonna be a lot more of the lighter color. A little bit of the hardened leather, 2 drops. I'm not gonna use any of the yellow on this one. I am going to take this new color and I'm going to sort of go over that single coat and blend, or you could say feather a little bit to mix the two. All right, and here I have to redo my speed paint. This time I do 5. There's my yellow. 2 drops of yellow. And just a little bit of the hardened leather. 2 drops. I want to take just a second and read one of my favorite passages. This is where Paul and Jessica are running through the desert. They have a worm right behind them. Behind them, the sound of the worm's passage stopped. Jessica and Paul turned, peered out onto the desert. Where the dunes began, perhaps 50 meters away, at the foot of a rock beach, a silver-gray curve broached from the desert, sending rivers of sand and dust cascading all around. It lifted higher, resolved into a giant, questing mouth. It was a round, black hole with edges glistening in the moonlight. The mouth snaked toward the narrow crack where Paul and Jessica huddled. Cinnamon yelled in their nostrils. Moonlight flashed from crystal teeth. Back and forth the great mouth wove. Paul stilled his breathing. Jessica crouched, staring. It took intense concentration of her Bene Gesserit training to put down the primal terrors, subduing a race memory fear that threatened to fill her mind. Paul felt a kind of elation. In some recent instant, he had crossed a time barrier into more unknown territory. He could sense the darkness ahead, nothing revealed to his inner eye. It was as though some step he had taken had plunged him into a well, or into the trough of a wave, where the future was invisible. The landscape had undergone a profound shifting. All right, here I'm just using a Hive Dweller purple speed paint mixed with some water. And I'm trying to keep, if you look inside the mouth, there are almost 3 tongues. I'm trying to keep those white for now because I'm going to go in with the red color. So you end up with what almost looks like a nuclear symbol of purple. And here's my red. I put a little bit of fire giant orange, a little bit of blood red, and then I use the speed paint medium purposefully because it has a lot of white color to it to kind of pinken it up. And that gives me the tongue color. And then the last step you just saw, I actually took the purple and did one little coat over the red. And this blending of the purple and the pink gives it a very organic, mouthy feel. Maybe a little bit too mammalian, but I think the way that they did the tongues kind of already does that. Here you can see I dry brush it all out. If you have the paint pooling in some of those speed paint crevices, it might get shiny. And for a sandworm, I definitely want it to look very matte, except maybe for some parts of the mouth, the inside. So super simple. I use ice yellow and just dry brush everything. And that gives me the whole family here. And I still need to take a second, and I'm going to do the mouths of all the little guys. All right, and that brings us to those teeth. So I just use a matte white, a little bit of water. And here I'm just really trying to get the highlight edge of each tooth just right up front where the light would hit it. I'll leave the purple on there around the sides of the teeth. So just kind of dab them in. There's also teeth coming out of the tongue pieces, it looks like. So I wanted to catch those. I'm going to use that same paint that I used to make the teeth, and I'm going to go get all these little horns. And I don't want to get the whole piece. I want it to look like the horns, like the little teeth, are coming out of the outer layer of the worm. Mainly focusing on the areas where the light would hit the hardest. And the little guys. Now to base, I use the same desert yellow that I use for everything. And these bases are kind of cool. They have a little bit of texture already built in. But we'll see. I wanted a little bit more, so I'll show you what I do here in a sec. Some pretty deep holes you have to get in. Now I thought about doing a darker sand color right around the worm, like fresh sand breaking out might be a little darker, but didn't mess with that. We gotta keep an eye on time here when we have this many minis. You can really see the gradation there. It looks really good. And I had this Vallejo earth texture. And it's honestly been a few years since I've used it, so I have to go add some water in. Get it back to a usable consistency. And I'm just gonna brush it on top of that paint when the paint's still kind of wet. And just use an old brush. And it kind of acts like both a highlight and it adds a little bit of sand texture and grit, a little bit more than is already on there. Yeah, this step's not really necessary. I could just dry brush with my ice yellow, but I figure this will be a little bit cooler. Here I actually start using more of a dry brush technique with the textured sand. Go ahead and dry those up. My little medium-sized worm piece has a perfect notch cut out of the base. I just wonder if they're all that way or it's just mine. Last step, now that it's dry, is I'm going to go in with a wash. Just try to pull out some more of that texture Well, technically it's the second to last step because after I wash it, I'm going to dry brush it. And there's the dry brush. So again, I really like this ice yellow. Works well. It's a dry brush color. I just use it pure. Sometimes I have a little wet sponge I'll dab. But and then I'm just going to kind of dry brush. I don't catch it too well with the camera here, but I think you get the gist. All right, I think we're pretty much done here. I did decide to hold off on the buildings because I was looking at the original artwork and they inspired me to try something crazy. It might work, it might not. I'm going to do a separate little thing for the buildings, and that should finish up all of the painting for Dune War for Arrakis. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.